Looking at the subdivisions of the inferior mediastinum, in the inferior posterior mediastinum, we find the descending thoracic aorta. It is found only within the posterior inferior mediastinum. Since we find the descending thoracic aorta only within this posterior inferior mediastinum, we will also find its branches only within this mediastinum. Those branches are the bronchial arteries, in which we have two left bronchial arteries and one right bronchial artery. The one right bronchial artery can either come off the descending thoracic aorta, off one of the two left bronchial arteries which come off the descending thoracic aorta, or it can come off the third right posterior intercostal artery. The esophageal arteries which come off the descending thoracic aorta are also found within this mediastinum, as well as some of the posterior intercostal arteries. Not all, but some. We also find the azygous vein only within the posterior inferior mediastinum. The same thing goes with the accessory hemiazygous and hemiazygous veins. They are all only found within the posterior inferior mediastinum. We find parts of the thoracic duct here, as well as parts of vagus and parts of the sympathetic trunk, just as we found parts of these in the superior mediastinum. And so since we find parts of the thoracic duct, vagus, and the sympathetic trunk within the superior mediastinum and the posterior inferior mediastinum, we know that we will not find them in the middle inferior or anterior inferior mediastinum. The lower esophagus is also found in the posterior inferior mediastinum, just as we said earlier, as well as some of the middle esophagus too, because that middle is the mix between the upper and lower esophagus.